My name is Brendan Burke. I was born and raised in the US, but I left there about 8.5 years ago. I moved to Cambodia, where I lived for 7 years. And then after those 7 years elapsed, I decided to attend Esade for my full-time MBA. I was at this point in my life. I was living in New York, where I had attended college. And then I realized I needed to live abroad. Like that was just flat out important for me. So I left New York. And interestingly, I had been to Cambodia twice on vacation. And the last night of my last vacation, I ended up meeting these people just by chance, waiting for my airplane. They worked at this great company. I was really looking to get into social enterprise, so I kept in touch and a job opened up. So I moved to Cambodia for work. And then for the entire 7 years, I was in the social enterprise field. At first, I had co-owned my own socially responsible fashion industry. My own fashion company. So we handmade these textiles that were created with the original methods that had been used for literally centuries. But then this technique was almost completely obliterated during the Khmer Rouge. So we tried to infuse those fabrics and textiles with a more modern design sensibility. So after a couple months there, I ended up having to buy the company with my coworker because the original employee had to pull out for health reasons. And then we ran that for a couple years. And then after we sold it, I joined a child protection NGO. Not necessarily the most logical jump, but what I did at the NGO was actually work in the social business department. So the NGO had a variety of training businesses. For example, I focused on retail stores throughout Cambodia, Thailand, and Laos, and also several training restaurants that we have throughout the world. And so I helped advise them in terms of marketing, communications, and growth strategies to get more international customers. So definitely taking a very business focus, and the idea from this social business department was that all the profits would be reinvested into the social side of the NGO to reduce its donor dependency. I just think that the more you travel, the more you are exposed to the world, and you just sort of become aware that what I was given in my life was by chance. I mean, let's be honest, it's just because of, the school I went to in high school, they were already using the Socratic method. So at 16, I'm being forced to give an opinion. And then I get to Cambodia and the learning style is so different there. And one of the hardest problems in our meeting was that people were very reluctant to speak up, especially to their manager. So I just thought that it's a matter of being equitable. Like if I'm giving these opportunities, then other people should be giving those opportunities. And the idea, I think, behind any responsible nonprofit should be to focus on knowledge transfer. I really think that if you have an international workforce, they should be working themselves out of a job so that the local workforce can then take over. So that was sort of my guiding principle when I was in Cambodia. And I loved it. I thought in the beginning, I'm going to go to Cambodia. I'm going to go for 2 years max, and then I'll go right back to New York. That didn't happen because just the work was so interesting. The culture was so interesting. Cambodia was and is at a really pivotal time in its development. I mean, a lot has changed, especially recently. And I mean, I just developed a life, within 7 years, a lot can change. And, think, okay, one more year, maybe 2 more years. And then by the end of that, I was, married. I had a dog. I had 2 cats. Like my life was completely different compared to when I moved as a single guy in my 20s. And then I think that's when I really started to ask myself, okay, what's next? Because I liked being part of the nonprofit industry, but I also think it has a lot of flaws in that they could be a bit more stringent in how they are run. The way they recruit and attract talent, it's just such a constant money game. Donor money is very trend driven. And I think the difficulty with the nonprofit industry is that a lot of nonprofits don't reinvest in their business as much as they ought to. So after 7 years, I felt like I had reached this career plateau in that I was solving different versions of the same problem over and over and over again. And, I sort of was very honest with myself. And I think I just reached this point where I realized I have contributed the maximum what I am able to, but now, like, what's next for me? And what I really wanted was a bigger platform. I was dealing with a very discrete subset of a population, quite vulnerable, marginalized individuals, street working, street living. But I wanted bigger challenges. I wanted new problems. And so I decided to my MBA then. I had been thinking about what my next move was, and I looked around at a lot of my friends and even within my own organization, and I realized that the people who were advancing had an advanced degree. And, I was quite naive. I was a little bit young when I moved there, and I always thought, oh, people in management must be so smart and talented. And not only talking about my own company, but other companies, from what I witnessed with my friends, is that being management does not automatically make you incredibly emotionally intelligent or incredibly qualified. And I thought, well, if all I need is a piece of paper to get me to the next level, I think I could do that job. And I was very fortunate in that my direct manager was very, very supportive of my goal. And, even when I was still in university, I had always imagined that I would do some level of postgraduate education. And I just hadn't done that because my career got so busy. And I thought, okay, maybe it's not necessary. But then I realized if I really want to advance in my career and solve these bigger problems, I need something. And I genuinely wanted the learning. I majored in French literature. I actively avoided taking finance or accounting courses. So I thought, if I'm going to be a good manager, I need to know this stuff. Europe had honestly just always been on my radar. I love Asia. I still think of it as home. Like when I get takeout and I smell a curry, I get that pang of homesickness. But 7 years there was a long time, and it's just so terribly difficult to get back to my family in the US. And that was a real blocker for me because I didn't want to go back to the US. It would be regressing. I was raised in Los Angeles, spent 11 years in New York. I didn't know what I would be going back to. That was my old life. And so Europe was sort of a fresh start. It would still be a little bit easier to go visit my family, one flight instead of 24 hours of flight. And I just found so many schools in Europe that, to be honest, I didn't even look at American schools at all. They were not on my radar. And I also liked that European schools are 1 year. I think my process was not terribly unique. When I started looking for schools, I did what everyone does. I looked at all the rankings. I made a list of all the top 10. And I introduced myself to all of their admission committees, just saying, hi, my name's Brendan. So here's my background. That's a sort of standard procedure to sort of form a relationship with an admissions committee. What I did not expect was how blatantly difficult it would be for an older student to form a relationship. I was 36 when I started applying for MBAs, and I had multiple schools flat out tell me, you're too old for a full-time program. Here's our executive program. And that's one thing I had not anticipated. I knew MBAs tend to skew younger, late 20s, early 30s. I didn't think 36 would be that big of a challenge, especially with significant international experience. I worked in not just Cambodia, but Thailand and Laos. So I thought that would help me, but there were certain schools that were just very blunt. I was too old. And one person said that there is a risk I would be harder to place in a full-time job, and that could affect their rankings. It's a business decision on their end. So out of that batch I sent all at the same time, a few expressed interest. And there's a difference between expressing interest and actually being interested. And so when I spoke with Esade, it was just a world apart. All of a sudden, I wasn't just another candidate to work through. I was a person. And there was just a warmth and a humanity to the process that I had been missing so far. And I was feeling quite low at that point, to be frank. So I was very happy just to have that sort of breath of fresh air in the admissions, like, you're interesting, you're different, that works for us, let's talk. I think if you're an older student, you have to be very clear about what you want, first of all. I think for some older students, the executive program would be the correct path, particularly if you are staying in the same country or region where you are already working. For me, I know that there is just a tremendous benefit to having a full-time experience. If you wanted to do a jump like I did, I was going to new geography. I needed to do everything I could to build a profound and helpful network. And I believed then, and I still believe now, that the only way for me to accomplish that would be with a full-time program. So first of all, be clear. Do you just want to advance in your career, or do you want to have an entirely fresh start like I did? If you want an entirely fresh start, I really, really do think a full-time program is the best method. And if you really are intent on that full-time program, you're going to have to be prepared to get rejection, not based on your work history or your grades, but simply because of your chronology. But the good news is, I know there are other schools, Esade predominantly, but other ones who would be at least willing to appreciate the fact that older students can bring a lot to a student body. I think a full-time program would become too difficult. It's a personal decision, but after 38, 40, it gets hard. And I'll tell you why. I loved my Esade experience. What Esade is sort of known for is the way they curate the class. And so I love the people I met. I didn't think I would. But for the first term and a half, I was really out of place because, a lot of MBA students, let's be honest, it can be a party culture. People want to go out, they want to go drinking, they want to stay out late. I did all that in my 20s. I'm married. I brought my dog with me to the MBA. Like, my life was very different. And so I think in the beginning, when I was so stressed about finding an internship, finding a job, there was that level of disconnect in that I didn't want to go out after class. I wanted to go home because I was here to learn and get a job. And that was sort of my strategy from the beginning. My priority would always be making sure my investment was worth it, and that I would land a full-time job. And then once I did that, I could relax a little bit and I could socialize. And in my case, I got very, very lucky. I executed that exact strategy and it worked out. And I have some of the most wonderful friendships from Esade. I'm just texted with someone right now. It worked out. But as an older student, you do have to be aware that there's going to be a disconnect between students who are in their 20s, who are going out a lot more, socializing a lot more in the beginning. And when you're an older student, you sort of know your groove and your routine a little bit more, and you're going to have to push yourself out of your comfort level a little bit more, or just find people who are more on your wavelength. I think one of the reasons that helps me feel more at home at Esade is because they do have a commitment to diversity. And I was president of the LGBTQ in Business Association. Esade helped me feel a bit more at home because I didn't have to have hesitations when I talked about my husband, and they were very, very open to promoting that kind of diversity in the school. And being able to talk about my true self, the husband that was waiting for me in Asia until we could move to Europe together, which is why I was looking for a job in a German-speaking country. There's just that openness, that culture of being welcoming that I think was also key to my success at Esade. So I think that was an important note to mention. I was always on very good terms with my career advisor, Naomi. And we always joke, the first time I had a meeting with her, I was just this ball of anxiety and nerves, like, I need to find a job. That's not particularly unusual. I think everyone goes through that. But they knew that I was pretty motivated, and I was also looking to do a significant jump. So I'm sort of the unicorn in that I sent out very few applications during my MBA, maybe 5 in total. I got lucky because when I arrived at the MBA, I took a hard look at myself and said, why am I here? What skill sets or gaps do I need to address? So I enrolled in this sort of additional class focused on tech issues. And through that, I became more involved with the Career Services department. And because of them, I ended up applying for my Amazon internship. And that was something that honestly was never, ever on my radar when I entered the MBA. I thought maybe I can go to a CSR department somewhere in Europe. I don't know. But I knew I wanted to be at a multinational in a German-speaking country that would sponsor my visa. So my options were pretty niche. But the Career Services department sent out this like last warning email. Hey guys, Amazon is closing their application process for the launch internships. Just apply. We think you've got a good shot. You have an interesting background. So I did on a complete whim, and then, never expecting it would go anywhere. And then I got invited to take the online test, which was a shock. Okay. And then that went well. And then I was invited to the first round of interviews. Again, did not see that coming because the interview prep for Amazon is quite rigorous. So I spent about 4 days just cramming. That was my life. Made it to the second round. I got the internship. And then at the end of the summer, I received a full-time offer. So I am currently based in Amazon's Munich office. I am doing solutions consulting and project planning for Amazon, which is new for me, a huge learning ramp up, but I love the team. I love how detailed it is. So it was a quite almost accidental triple jump, I suppose. I had hoped for a double jump, but the triple is a nice bonus. So this is the really interesting thing, and I'm going to rely on the advice a friend gave me because he did his MBA a couple years before me, and his advice did not resonate until I began my own experience. He knew that I wanted the education, the learning, the finance, the accounting, and you certainly get that. You can get that at any MBA. But I think what holds true, especially for an older student, when your sense of self is a little bit more baked in, the real value of an MBA is transforming how you think of yourself and gaining an understanding of what you bring to a company. So for example, I thought, okay, I'm this, NGO guy from Asia. What company would possibly be interested in someone like me? I just had very low expectations for myself. And then because of the because of the MBA and the things I started to do well in, I could present in class, I could do, writing, various things, and you just understand what your competitive advantages are. All these things that I had assumed everyone could do pretty well, I realized were actually maybe a bit more unique to myself. So maybe I don't have the typical tech background or the typical multinational background, but what I do have is a really interesting background learning how to communicate with different cultures and anticipate the needs of an international client base. So it just completely changed my understanding of what I could bring to the table at a company. And I guess that gave me a lot more confidence to understand where I could fit in the professional workforce. The relationships you form at the MBA are going to be highly dependent on how authentic you are, which I know is such a cheesy buzzword at this moment, but you're going to be surrounded by probably hundreds of very driven type A personalities. That's great, but when you're at that level, everyone has a great CV. You're not going to be that special because of what's on paper. What's going to set you apart in an MBA, in your interviews, in your internships, is actually having a more fundamental sense of who you are and being okay with that. That includes your vulnerabilities, your limitations, your aspirations. It's okay to be a little bit transparent. Hey, I'm new to this, but I love that. So if you are just very conscious of not trying to project who people want you to be and instead projecting who you really are, I think that will attract many more formative and deeper relationships.